Hello, I'm Kathy Rager, Senior Services Coordinator for Downers Grove Township. Welcome to the Vintage Times. For over 30 years now, the Vintage Times series has produced topics of interest and timely importance for the senior community. And when I refer to seniors, I'm including adults that are 55 years of age and older who may need resources or referrals for information for themselves or a loved one. Today's topic is of extreme importance, especially to the senior population. We will be discussing senior scams and frauds in two-part presentation. Robert Petranek will be sharing information in part one of our presentation today. Hello, Robert. Welcome to the program.
Hi there.
I'd like to give a little background on you.
Okay.
Robert here is a lifetime township resident, realtor with Coldwell Banker, member of Downers Grove Township Senior Advisory Committee, Friends for Downers Grove Township Senior Board Member. Robert has developed an interest in scams and frauds due to his participation in classes at the Homeland Security Training Institute and also his personal experiences. I'll let him expand on this a little bit. Would you like to do that?
Sure. I'm Robert Petranek. As Kathy had mentioned, I'm involved with the Friends for Downers Grove Township Seniors as well as the Seniors Advisory Council. I've lived in Burr Ridge, Willowbrook, and Darien. Lived a few years outside of the township, but most of my life has been in Downers Grove Township. And one of the reasons that this topic is near and dear to my heart is because of the proximity I've had to a few different scams that have occurred to either me or to people I have known. And it's an ever-evolving issue. There's always new wrinkles as far as ways that people can be taken advantage of, and so it's important to get the word out there on these items.
And so you were saying that you had some personal experiences with fraud and senior scams. Can you elaborate a little bit on that?
Sure. One particular thing that occurred, we were selling my parents' place in Wilmington, Illinois, it's right on the Kankakee River. It's a kind of a recreational home. My parents got to the point where they didn't want it anymore and were going to sell it. So these folks, we got into a contract to sell it, and we got to the, make a long story short, we got to the closing table, and the folks that were going to buy it, there was definitely something wrong. We walked in, and they were very unhappy. You could have heard a pin drop in there, and what we were told was that a couple weeks before the closing was supposed to happen, their Comcast account got hacked, their email, and whoever hacked it realized they were in the process of purchasing a home, went through their lawyer's correspondence and figured out what was happening, which was a cash transaction. They created a fake letterhead of the law firm and sent an email to these folks telling them they needed to wire over $300,000 to a Chase bank account to make the transaction happen. And they did this without checking with the attorney or the title company or anyone else. And basically the money, from what I understand, it went into that account. And it was 2 weeks before the closing. It wasn't like the day before or day or two before, which is typical. So the money went into an account with Chase in, I think, either Peoria or Pekin, and immediately after it was deposited in that account, it went out of the country. And I believe the the case is still open now, and that's 10 months ago.
Were they able to recover any
well,
of their money, or do you think
No,
they'll have
as of
hopes
right
doing
now,
that?
yeah, as of right now, that I believe it's still open, which means they haven't recovered anything. So the closing didn't happen that day. We had to, the closing got canceled. They weren't able to buy the property. And the frightening thing about it was the email that came in was just like one number or letter off from like the legitimate email it should have been. So if you're looking at that and you're not like really, squinting to see like the actual, maybe there's two L's where there should have been one, or an extra E or something in the name of where the email came from, but that little thing that you're not going to even notice, and it's completely coming from a different address, someone trying to scam you and trying to mimic as best they can, it looking legitimate. There were even grammar errors and like typos in the actual letter itself, because I read it. I actually saw a copy of it. So to me, it would have raised suspicion, but to the folks that were scammed, it didn't. And
So they were in the process of a business transaction.
Yeah, and they felt
assumed that the correspondence they were getting was from their lawyer.
Exactly.
And went ahead with the transaction without questioning, because it was their email, and
Yeah.
they thought that would be all right.
Yeah. Well, it's something that most of us don't do very often. As a realtor, I may either sell or buy or be part of that process of a home 4 times in a month. Most people, it's between 5 and 20 years that you purchase
Yeah.
or sell a home. So if you're not up to speed on the way things are done today, or if you're just not really familiar with the process, any of those factors can influence, your knowledge base is going to influence how susceptible you are to being duped with a fraud or a scam. And this one, they, to my knowledge, that money is still gone. This story has a silver lining. The folks were able to purchase the house which they had wanted to, which is, not always the case for most people, but they were able to get through it and get the place. But as far as I know, the case is still open. That money is still gone. So, there are no silly questions.
So you're talking about life savings. So if,
Yeah.
it's almost good to double check more than once. Triple check, call.
Yeah.
Maybe their lawyer. Make sure that the correspondence they're getting is legitimate.
Yes.
Is that,
Well, particularly since this occurred, I have noticed that most attorneys, this was a big story on ABC News. It was called Wired Away, was the name of the segment that they did on this particular transaction. And what I've noticed is all the attorneys that I deal with pretty much after that point forward have some sort of disclaimer at the bottom of their email that says, basically, know who you're dealing with. We will never give you wiring instructions, statements like that. Double check any instructions that you've been given, that kind of thing. Because wire fraud is very real. It's from a distance, and it's very difficult to, track people down if they're not at arm's length. If you can't, if they're outside of the country or electronically, it's a different thing completely.
boy, that's amazing. And but I think that's good to know, that, with the disclaimer on there, that they really do know, just like with the IRS, that we will not, ask you to wire that transfer to us. And people wouldn't necessarily know that. Like you said, there's a lot of time in between selling homes and that, for most people, especially if they're retiring or, moving on to a different situation. So that's good to know.
Right.
And you said personal experiences. Was there another one that you would like to
Yeah, actually,
share with us?
Yeah, a few years ago, personally, I had just left a CVS, and I had used my Discover card at the CVS, and I made a purchase. It was like $30, I think, and I walked out of there, and I got a call from an 800 number right at that time, and it turned out that it was Discover calling me, and they asked, "Hello, this is Discover Card Services, and did you just make a purchase at a CVS in Illinois?" I said, "Yeah, I did. I'm just walking out, as a matter of fact." And the person on the other end of the line said, "Okay, so then you probably didn't also just make a purchase of $320 worth of liquor at a liquor store in Atlanta, Georgia." And I said, "No." And they said, "Okay, well, we've just canceled your card." I said, "Okay, is there anything that I should do, or can I do?" And they said no. They said, "What we're going to do is we're going to have a new card and a new number issued to you. We'll have it FedEx to you by 8 a.m. tomorrow morning." And this was on a Friday. So the very next day, Saturday morning, they don't want you to ever stop using that card,
Yeah.
not even for a minute, you know.
Yeah.
But so they did have a new card to me the next morning at 8 a.m. The old one was invalid. But I, asked a few questions when I was on the phone with them. I said, well, how does this happen? They said, well, probably, more likely than not, someone went in, made a purchase at that CVS, and they jammed a little skimmer up into the card reader that you used at some point, and they're probably sitting in the parking lot with a wireless that every time a card goes through there, not only is CVS getting the information, they're getting the information wired to them remotely. And then what they do with that is they don't use that information locally. They work with somebody in a different state typically, and they exchange card information. So what happens, according to this person I talked to at Discover, is it becomes automatically a federal crime, and it effectively it goes out of local jurisdiction and it becomes a cross state lines crime. So the bottom line is the local police aren't going to deal with it because it's now federal. The federal police, there's just not enough of them to address the thousands of these that probably occur every day. And so essentially these charge card companies, they have insurance policies. They get made whole by the insurance, and you get a new card, and that's just the way it's handled. These things aren't even prosecuted, is what my understanding is.
So do you think the scammers are purposely, I mean, even though you would think it would have more of an impact going across state lines because now it's in federal jurisdiction, which seems a little bit more scary and, that they might get caught, it's almost an advantage to them because they're not under local law enforcement anymore, and knowing maybe the government isn't going to be able to there's so much identity theft going on that they wouldn't be able to follow up, adequately if there's not enough people out
Right.
there to do it. So.
I think that's the whole mechanism there, is they know that you'd need hundreds and thousands more federal agents to be able to prosecute this kind of thing. So I think the criminals may understand they're exploiting a weakness, which is just the way that the system operates, and that's why they operate with people remotely to, further, dilute the crime or obfuscate the chances of, or lessen the chances of it being ever prosecuted. I think that's part of it. Yeah.
So is it because of these personal experiences that you started taking classes over at the Homeland Training
That's definitely
Institute?
part of it. Yeah, I mean, well,
and
in
got
addition,
involved with the senior scams and fraud.
yeah,
presentations?
with Tom Brady, who we're going to be doing an interview with as well. He's the director of the Homeland Security Training Institute at COD, and that's how I got involved directly with a lot of this information and learned so much more about it. But also, in my own business dealings, I've dealt with a lot of seniors, and you get a whole new perspective and appreciation for the differences. If you're not exposed to a lot of this, then you're a prime target, really. And there's a lot of other reasons why seniors are targeted. And I mean, you have just the general nature of a person that has, been taught a lot of social etiquette and is maybe not as willing to, tell someone off on the phone if they think it's a scam artist. A senior might be more polite. They have, some of them have, you can bet some of them have memory issues. There's loneliness as well. Some people just, want to talk on the phone.
If it's a friendly voice, they probably
Right.
figure we're having a great conversation.
Yes,
And this
yes.
person is, interested in helping me out here a little bit.
Very much so. There can be that opportunity that a scam artist is going to take advantage of. Any kind of weakness that can be exploited, that is, the mode of somebody who's out to con another individual.
Is there a greater exposure to fraud now than there was in the past, do you think?
Definitely. Historically, to be able to take advantage of somebody, you would most likely have to be, with them in person to shortchange them or however you might want to do it. With the advent of mail and, the telecommunications, the phone, the biggest one being, the digital age here. We have not only do we have people interstate, but from foreign countries committing email scams and any kind of online Trojan horse type attacks or virus attacks, malware attacks, any of that kind of thing can be done from anywhere on the planet. So and there's always new flavors of things. One of the things that I've learned is that the basic principles haven't changed. It's just that they've evolved. A lot of the scams that are going on today are the same type of scams that have been perpetrated since the Civil War or since Greek and Roman times, just repackaged with the latest technology.
So it seems like that there's it's different now, in the digital age, that scams are more prolific, or there's greater access to seniors because of the digital age, or?
I think all of that,
Yeah.
I do. And, for them, it's just a numbers game. Let's say you're dealing with a telemarketing fraud. They might call 100 people, and they only get 2 out of that 100 that they actually get them to give up their social security number or mother's maiden name or whatever it is they're looking for. Even that, if they've got 2 out of 100, just the untold damage they can do to the credit reports of those people, or using opening credit in their name, any kind of different way that information can be used to open new accounts, to rack up bills that people have no idea of until a bill collection service comes and says, hey, you owe $10,000 to Visa. I don't even have a Visa. That kind of thing can happen. And so if they can just get 1 out of 100 to fall for their scam,
Well, what kind of ways do they perpetrate that scam in a digital age? I mean, are there terms that are used how do they, like when you're with the email, with probably a lot of seniors are using email, but not all seniors have computers, though, too. But we're talking about that age of 55 and above. And so you've got quite an age range of people that are probably more familiar with computer age and digital experiences versus those that have really no experience, nor do they want that experience.
Sure.
With the digital piece of that, with the emails and that, are there certain scams that are more common, digitally? Is there terms for those?
There definitely are, and yeah, I can definitely go over a few things. One of the basic ones is dumpster diving. That's a way they get a lot of information, and that's more of a physical analog type of attack. It's if you didn't shred your documents and you throw them out in the garbage, there are people that will go through, find old credit card statements or credit reports or whatever it is that you might toss out. Even an electric bill can give up information that you don't necessarily want people to have. So dumpster diving is one thing. Phishing is another thing. Recently with Facebook, there's a lot of these things that come up on there and say, what was the last good concert you attended? Or what's your favorite color? Or what town were you born in? All that information can be used and culled and archived, I guess you will, to be used to open new accounts. Some of it can, some of it can't. But a lot of that, people are willing to share and share and share, and often, for example, if you're on Facebook and somebody happens to know...
I love it for pictures.
And everybody does.
Yeah.
Everybody uses Facebook.
A lot of grandparents looking on Facebook for their pictures, so they have a profile.
That's exactly where I'm going with this.
Oh.
If you're on Facebook and your name is John Smith, and it shows the relation of your mother, which is Betty Johnson, well, then they have you, and if they know where you live, if they happen to have your address, and your name is John Smith, they have your name, they have your address, and they know your mother was Betty Johnson, they have your mother's maiden name. You see there, you've got 3 pieces of information that are critical. All you need is one more piece of information, maybe your date of birth, which you might share on Facebook as well, and then they've got enough information to open credit in your name without ever even talking to you.
Wow.
Just from scanning through and figuring out, this guy, there's his mother, that's her maiden name, we have his address, and his date of birth is right on there too. Boom.
So what would you suggest people do if they want to maintain that account, just to share, say, share pictures with grandchildren, things like that? I mean, that's pretty scary. Those are things that hadn't even occurred to me.
Yeah.
Is there a way to limit your profile, or?
There are many ways that you can go into Facebook and you can turn on and off different bits of information that you're willing to share. There's also ways that you can share with friends, close friends, friends and family. There's different choices. I don't know exactly what they're called. And then there's public. And most people have their profiles set to a public setting, whether they know it or not. So limiting access to people that you know is probably a good idea. Not accepting friend requests from people that is maybe some name you vaguely remember from 35 years ago. Maybe it's not a good process to accept that friend request. Maybe there were good reasons that you, left contact or cut ties with that person in the first place.
So truthfully, probably keeping it within a family realm for many people is just, like literally their family and versus public is probably better.
Sure. And I know that's difficult to do because, you meet people all the time and you get Facebook friend requests all the time. And, you just need to, I think, be careful about what kind of information that you're allowing to be accessed out there. Don't give out sensitive information on social media platforms. Try and, I guess just always be considerate about who's getting what and how much information they know about you.
Yeah, it sounds like limiting the information is best.
Yeah.
And I know we touched on it already, but why are seniors particularly attractive targets for scammers and con artists? Why is that?
Well, there are definitely age-related issues that play into why they are likely targets. One major reason is because they've worked all their lives and they've had enough time to build up assets for people to want to pilfer. When you're dealing with a person who's maybe 24 years old and just out of college and the $100,000 worth of college debt, there's nothing to steal from them. But when you deal with somebody who's retired, who spent all their life, making income and also saving for retirement, you have reserves there that can be tapped. If the money's already there, it's easier to get it than just, using credit of somebody who's younger. Those assets are already there. Older people are usually polite. They won't, yell at somebody and hang up the phone as easily as a younger person would say, hey, I've got no patience for this. I don't know what you're looking for, but I don't have it. Older people they're in large part, they're more trusting because they haven't had experiences perhaps that have been negative. Their guard's not up maybe as high as somebody who's a little bit more tech savvy, maybe.
Well, what are types of things are red flags that potential victims should be aware of?
Well, any kind of letter telling you, oh, congratulations, you've won this or that, and all you need to do is send $59.95 for shipping and handling, or you've got to get your prize, a sweepstakes you don't remember entering, something like that. Anybody calling you out of the blue to tell you that you're a winner is often an opportunity for them to, the only one who's going to end up making any money in the transaction is possibly a scam artist, something like that.
Well, what types of fraud occur specific to seniors and healthcare that they should be advised about?
Yeah, that is, there's a bunch. Number one is the health cure scam. If you have somebody who's got some serious health issues and somebody comes to them and says, I've got a miracle cure for you, or I have something that can take care of that for you, our health is precious. If it's something that they say, oh, well, the medical association hasn't approved this treatment yet, but we know it works, snake oil sales, essentially. Again, that idea of something as old as time. Here's a miracle cure. Here's a tincture that's going to alleviate your problems. Things like that are you're preying on the hope someone has that what you have is going to cure them or help them. It's a horrible thing, but the health cure fraud, miracle cures, those are something that people fall victim to because they're desperate and they want to, if you're dying from some condition, somebody comes along and says, well, for only $3,000, I can give you a treatment regimen that'll cure you.
And probably seniors at that point have more ailments, and they're thinking about those things and might be desperate for some of these potentially harmful, but thinking they're going to be helpful types of elixirs.
Yeah.
How do consumers protect themselves from potential dangers?
Well, just one more thing to touch on with
Sure.
regard to the seniors. There's also, Medicare fraud. There's the fact that people will will use your information and then turn around and get a surgery for themselves, something like that.
Oh, my goodness.
They actually will do identity fraud and use your health care, basically, is another way that those kind of frauds are perpetrated on seniors. And
Wow.
the Medicare system is different than, during your working years, that kind of health care that you're paying into, it's a different system. And there's companies that'll sign you up for a certain plan A or plan C or plan D. They'll offer you things like, here's a $200 grocery store gift card if you sign up for this plan, because that plan somehow they get a kickback on that they wouldn't get on another plan. That kind of a thing happens too,
Wow.
just regarding the health care.
Well, how do they protect themselves then from these dangers?
Well, the simplest way is be protective. Guard your information. Keep checking your credit card statements. Check your bank account statements frequently. Keep your eye on these things. Read through your statements. The reason they send them to you or create a new statement for you if you do it digitally is for you to be able to, review it and see if anything doesn't make sense. Too many people are complacent and don't literally go over that
A
information.
smart thing to do.
Yeah, line by
A
line.
real smart thing to do.
And fraudsters can be hitting you for just like a little charge every month. They can do it also as a test. They can hit you with $1 or $2 charge to see if you do anything to, if you notice it. And if you don't, then they'll hit you for a big charge a couple months down the line.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing. So, what are ways to verify the validity of company and businesses or track records? What's a good way to?
Well, obviously there's Better Business Bureau, Triple B. It's www.tripleb.org.
Okay.
There's GuideStar, which is a site where you can see if charities are actual legitimate registered charities.
That's a good one. Yeah. A lot of people knocking at your door looking
yeah,
for things.
yeah.
Besides.
You can go through your local police department if you feel you've been a victim of a fraud or a scam. There's also your district's attorney's office can help you with certain issues if you do become a victim. Thankfully, there's a lot of different resources available today that can help.
Are local police, of benefit as well? And I mean, I know we don't often think about postal inspectors too.
Absolutely, depending on the area of concern. If you've been frauded by a sweepstakes through the mail, then yeah, that would involve the Postal Inspection Service. Often you'll need to actually file a police report so they can do an investigation if there has been a scam. Local police definitely can be of assistance to you in some of these cases, depending on what kind of scam it is.
Well, I know this is a huge, huge topic to cover, and unfortunately for us, that we have, these senior scams and frauds, and obviously these are frauds that are perpetuated on the general public as well, but, as you were stating earlier, the senior population is especially vulnerable. We're making this a series, a two-part series for a good reason. There's an awful lot of territory to cover, and we can talk about some that have happened to us. You've talked about some of your personal experiences, but there's also, how do we report it? What are the best practices? What are ways that we can deal with these things as they come up or help others to deal with them? And so when we have our part 2 series, we would definitely welcome you back with Tom Brady, who will be coming for part 2 of this to continue this very valuable presentation.
Absolutely.
And, before we finish, would you like to add anything else? I know we didn't cover everything today because, like I say, it's impossible to cover it, but
Sure.
in one part of the series. But is there anything you'd like to add or promote for now?
Well, I guess basically the most important thing to remember is be careful with whom you're sharing information with. Don't provide sensitive information or data to anyone that you don't know well. limit that information and be diligent. Use antivirus programs on your computer. Make sure that anything that can be encrypted is. All those are basic ideas are good things.
Thank you so much, Robert, for participating in our program today.
Thank you.
I welcome you back for our next part 2 in our series, and I kind of almost see maybe a part 3 in our future as well, because again, a lot of territory to cover and a lot of new frauds coming up every day. So again, thank you again for participating today in our program.
Well, thank you.